Hello, and welcome to Regiments of Renown Empire Edition. Today we're going to be talking about the Regiments of Renown on the Empire roster, what they do, what they provide over the basic variants, and when I would consider incorporating them into my armies. As per usual, this video will pertain mostly to domination mode, though this information can help you out in land battles or campaign as well. So, let's get right into it. First up, we have Sigmar's Sons, the ROR Empire State Troops. Their big buff is that they are unbreakable, and that makes them one of the core units of the Empire roster, and they have been for pretty much as long as they have existed. The Empire's front line tends to be very flimsy, as Empire State Troops are quite squishy. They have low armor, low HP for an infantry unit, so having that unbreakable trait actually helps you hold the front line quite a bit longer. So these guys have been a real staple of the Empire front line for, like I said, ages and ages, so I don't think they'll be going anywhere anytime soon. They are just about a must pick. Next, we have the Tattersouls, the ROR Flagellants. Their big buff is that they have an extra 40 models and the HP to scale with that, the relative HP. So, I honestly find the extra models to be a bit of a detriment for these guys, as it makes them take a lot more damage from things like spells or missiles or cav charges. They would have been much better off if they just got the extra HP without the extra models. So, I think as Flagellants aren't in a great spot in general these days, I don't think these guys are really that valuable. Especially for the price, they're pretty expensive, and they just take damage so quickly. Even with the extra models, they'll stay around a lot longer, but they tend to take damage very quickly, so I tend to skip out on these guys. Stirland's Revenge. These guys are an excellent unit. They have AP missiles, immune to psychology, and hefty melee stats, much higher than that of other frequent militia, which makes them a very, very strong missile piece for the Empire. Their melee stats make them very self-sufficient, and having that heavy AP missile strength can do very, very good work for you on the front line, and it's very nice to have a missile that you don't need to protect. Because usually, if you try to bring handgunners, you gotta have infantry to protect them, or cav. These guys, you can just summon them in, let them shoot for a while. If something jumps on them, if a dog or light cav jumps on them, they can actually fight those units off, which is very, very useful. So these guys are quite strong if you need that AP missile source. Next up, we have Deathjacks, the ROR Archers. These guys' main gimmick is that they have stalk and snipe, so they are entirely invisible when they fire until an enemy unit gets terribly close to them. These guys are a bit gimmicky. Snipe is kind of hard to utilize for them because their range is so low, only 120. The one thing they used to be used for, back in the days of Warhammer 2 land battles, was to try and vanguard deploy them behind the enemy, sneak them up and assassinate an artillery piece. That kind of role isn't really necessary for the Empire in domination mode, both because of Defender's spawn zone making it very hard to do that, as well as you have very strong artillery yourself these days, so you tend to have artillery advantage anyway. So these guys have kind of been left behind by the times, and I wouldn't really recommend them in domination mode these days. Next, we have the White Wolves, Huntsmen ROR. So, what they get is they get immune to psychology, encourage, and hefty melee stats, almost twice that of regular Huntsman units. These guys are a bit of an odd one. You typically don't want, or you're not looking for your missile units to stand and fight, which is what ITP and encourage allow you to do. You stay and fight when something is jumping on you. But with their hefty melee stats, they can actually defend themselves quite well. Unfortunately, with their low model count, low HP, and spread formation, they tend to take damage very quickly anyway. So they're not that great. And also having a missile line, like these are still a missile you probably have to defend, unlike the Stirland's Revenge. They're quite a bit more expensive and you expect them to do a lot more damage. So you still want to keep them safe. And if you're trying to keep your Huntsmen safe, having one that can defend itself doesn't really help you unless you're only bringing the one. Typically, if you're taking Huntsmen, you're taking 3 or 4. And if only one of them can protect himself, well then your opponent's just going to go to the next one down the line. So having only one that can defend itself doesn't really help. And encouraging the other ones, your other Huntsmen that still have terrible melee stats, that's just going to make them stick around longer and take more damage. You'd honestly rather have them run away, get to safety, and then rally and start shooting again, rather than actually stand and fight in melee with their terrible melee stats. So these are a unit I would generally skip over. Silver Bullets, the ROR handguns. In addition to having magical missile attacks, they also have stock, which can allow you to get some really nice ambushes against enemy large monsters or anything with physical resist. These guys hit very, very hard, even for a handgun unit, especially with the buffed accuracy from their rank 9 stats. So these guys are an absolute terror against enemy large monsters. And they can just absolutely show them apart, especially if your opponent's not, on top of their micro and doesn't notice them coming out of stealth and shooting. So these are a very, very strong missile piece. If you want handgunners, usually you want these guys. They hit exceptionally hard, and they're really hard to spot out or get shot by enemy missile units because of that stock. So excellent unit if you're looking for a powder unit. Next up, we have the Zintler's Reichsgard, our Reichsgard unit. So these guys get Vanguard and ITP, as well as the rank 9 stats. So these guys have become a staple of the Empire in domination. People like them a lot just because of their Vanguard deploy, especially on maps like Black Ark, where Vanguard deployment is very, very relevant. On top of that, the ITP allows them to fight certain things that they would otherwise struggle against, things like big monsters, enemy, anything that causes terror. They'll be a lot better at just holding in place and locking down and dealing damage too. So other than that, there's a solid, heavy cav unit. Vanguard deploy if you need it. It's quite good. Otherwise, they're just heavy cav unit. They don't really do anything terribly special. Royal Altdorf Gryphites, Demigryph Knights. They cause terror, and that's all they get over the regular ones. Again, rank 9 stats. Demigryph Knights aren't that in a great spot in general at this moment, even the basic ones. So I struggle to find a purpose for these guys. On top of that, this terror will seldom get used because these guys, they're anti-large monsters cav, which means they really want to be fighting big monsters or enemy cav. Big monsters are already going to cause terror, which means they'll be immune to terror. So these guys' terror will have no real effect. In a cav duel, yeah, it can have some impact, but I feel like you just have better options for winning cav duels for a lot cheaper. So I struggle to find a place for these guys personally. If you want to commit to these guys and bring a life caster to heal them up and everything, they can probably do a lot of good work, but that's not really the playstyle the Empire is going for these days. They're going for a more missile-oriented style, so these guys just don't really fit in to what the Empire wants to do these days, unfortunately. Now on to artillery. You've got the Hammer of the Witches, the Great Cannon. These guys have 25% physical resist and magical attacks, as well as an over 50% damage increase. For only 300 more than the basic variant, that damage increase in particular makes them an absolute terror. They're very, very good shooting enemy artillery, winning duels because of their own physical resist, or shooting, again, big monsters, big demons, anything that they can use the magical attacks against. And just that extra damage is well worth it. If you're bringing cannons, this is definitely a solid one to go for. So it's definitely a pretty hefty upgrade over the basic variant, and well worth the 300 extra gold price tag, I'd say. Next is a unit that needs no introduction. If you played Domination as or against the Empire lately, you've probably seen this guy in action. It's the Sunmaker, the RR Hellstorm rocket battery. Its missile strength is very deceptive as it is much higher. It only fires, once every 20 seconds, so this is actually half of the missile strength because of the reload speed. It can devastate entire blocks of infantry. It can kill multiple infantry units with one volley. It even does fine against cav or skirmish cav or anything like that. It's an absolute terror. It also excels in domination because it only has 8 ammunition, which means you can fire all of its ammo relatively quickly and then desummon it for a hefty refund. This thing is just a staple. This is one of the defining features of the Empire in domination mode, and I would highly encourage you to take it in just about every matchup. It is incredibly overpowered at the moment. Templehof Luminark. The big kicker this guy has is a bound net of ammo talk, 3 of them in fact. It also has encourage, though I find that much less relevant on a missile piece that wants to be repositioning and getting good angles. So net of ammo talk actually synergizes really, really well with what Luminarks want to do. They want to be shooting big monsters or chariots or anything like that. And it tends to be fairly inaccurate, so having that net to actually lock things in place and give them an easy shot is very, very powerful. Usually if you bring a Luminark in general, you're going to bring a net of some sort, whether that be Marcus Wolfhart or a Lightcaster. So having it built right into the unit is actually quite strong. It only has 100 meter range, but honestly, letting the enemy get that close means that once they're netted, you're probably going to hit whatever shot you can take against it. So this actually synergizes really, really well with the kit of the Luminark. So if you want a Luminark, this guy's probably the way to go. That said, Luminarks aren't very strong at the moment, so take that with a grain of salt, but this ability synergizes very, very heavily with what they do, so it's not a bad unit. Black Lions, the RR War Wagon. This guy functions very differently from the basic War Wagon. Instead of having a crew of handgunners inside the cart, it has a Hellblaster volley gun. This makes it basically a mobile artillery piece with a hefty, hefty missile strength that can devastate most targets. That said, it does bring an equally hefty mark price tag at about no, over twice the regular war wagon. It sits at 1900 gold price. So if you bring it, you really want to have a specific target in mind, and a good reason why you wouldn't want basic cannons or a Hellblaster to do the same job. That said, it is mobile and it is hard to shut down, and it does hit incredibly hard, as well as being able to be healed quite effectively. Unlike regular artillery crews, these guys all share, it's only, the health pool is only divided among 4 units instead of among an entire crew, so it's a much better target for healing if you need to keep on the battlefield. So I quite like this thing against things like gyrocopters or, again, big demons. That said, you do have plenty of other tools for those jobs, so it's kind of up to you whether you want these guys or if you want to just go for cheaper options like, again, a basic artillery piece or hand gunners or something like that. So not a bad unit, but they do compete for that same slot that many other things in your roster fill. So that is all the RWARs for the Empire. Thanks so much for watching. If you found it helpful, please like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. And I will see you all next time. Peace.